Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. The United States Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, has begun his three-day visit to Poland. He is here for an international conference known by its official name as the Ministerial to Promote a Future of Peace and Security in the Middle East, which begins tomorrow in Warsaw. The conference has been jointly organised by Poland and the United States.
Immediately after arriving in Warsaw, Mike Pompeo met Minister of Foreign Affairs Jacek Czaputowicz. They discussed Polish-American economic cooperation in the areas of energy and security. In this context, the Foreign Affairs Ministers of Poland and the United States raised the issue of the permanent presence of US troops in Poland. An international conference on the situation in the Middle East begins tomorrow in Warsaw. Official delegations from over 60 countries have confirmed their participation in the conference.
3 people from the senior management of Polish oil giant, PKN Orlen, were detained upon the request of the General Prosecutor in Łódź. One of the 3 is the former president of the company's management board, Jacek K. The men are expecting to hear details of the charges of corruption made against them.
Officers of the Gdańsk regional branch of the Central Anti-Corruption Bureau detained 3 people, the former president of PKN Orlen and 2 executive officers from the company. The case concerns alleged large-scale mismanagement of company funds on a great scale, as a result of which PKN Orlen is alleged to have lost millions of dollars. The detainees will hear their charges in the Gdańsk regional branch of the CAB.
In the United States, Democratic and Republican congressmen may reach a consensus regarding the federal budget this week. Should this happen, President Donald Trump will receive some of the funds he has been seeking to finance the construction of the Mexican border wall, which was one of his main campaign promises during the 2016 presidential elections.
For Donald Trump, the building of a wall on the border of Mexico is a matter of the highest priority. The president spoke about this during a rally in Texas, El Paso.
And there's no place better to talk about border security, whether they like it or not, because I've been hearing a lot of things, oh, the wall didn't make that much of a difference. You know where it made a big difference? Right here in El Paso.
The agreement of the construction of the wall and the allocation of $5.7 billion from the federal budget for this purpose must be negotiated by Saturday. If this is not achieved, the country may be paralyzed by a second shutdown, an example, a budget stalemate. This is probably why Trump chose to give a speech in El Paso, which is considered to be a bastion of the Democratic Party.
We're doing whatever we have to do. The wall's being built, it'll continue, it's going at a rapid pace. The Rio Grande, it's happening, go check it out.
Meanwhile, congressmen in Washington seem to be close to a compromise on the wall of the Mexican border. If negotiations on the Capitol between Democrats and Republicans are successful, this will mean the end of the crisis over the federal budget.
We reached an agreement in principle between us on the Homeland Security and the other 6 bills.
And I was pleased that we were able to work together, bipartisan way, come to an agreement, and our staffs are just working out the details.
It is not yet known whether Donald Trump will accept the deal, but the congressmen hope that the president will sign it on Friday, February 15th, when the funding for the Department of Homeland Security, Justice and other federal agencies will expire.
The Polish consul in Norway, Dr. Sławomir Kowalski, has been declared a persona non grata by the Norwegian authorities and given 1 week to leave the country. The Norwegian authorities claim that the consul has violated his diplomatic status. However, it appears that the reason for his dismissal could be the fact that Kowalski attempted to prevent the Norwegian Children's Affairs Office from taking Polish children away from their families for baseless reasons.
Consul Kowalski intervened many times when the Norwegian Children's Affairs Office, the Barnevernet, was taking Polish children away from their families. Kowalski often used the so-called emergency procedure and placed the children under the care of anonymous guardians. During one such intervention, Sławomir Kowalski was escorted out by Norwegian police officers who even threatened him with an arrest.
Inside the building. Have to leave the building.
At first, the Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs claimed that Dr. Sławomir Kowalski made it impossible for the Barnevernet officials and the local police at the town of Hamar to perform their duties. When we released the video footage from the intervention, it turned out that the Foreign Ministry's statement was completely untrue. In the video, we can see that the consul is being pushed out of the premises of the Barnevernet building by the Norwegian law enforcement, even though he's asking the officers in a calm manner to respect the consular law and allow him to talk with an underage Polish citizen held there. In the end, he is not allowed to do that.
ostatecznie umożliwione.
The Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs demanded in January that the Polish Foreign Ministry recalls its consul. The request, however, was not acted upon by Poland, which means that the Polish diplomat will soon lose his privileges and immunity in the country. After the Polish consul was given the status of persona non grata, the Polish side acted accordingly and gave the same status to the Norwegian consul in Warsaw. According to attorney Jerzy Grzegorz, the actions taken by the Polish Foreign Ministry are perfectly normal in this situation. In his opinion, Sławomir Kowalski did a lot of good work for the Polish diaspora in Norway.
Konsul Kowalski był całkowicie nadzwyczajny.
Consul Kowalski was an extraordinary diplomat, a perfect man for the job. He was chosen for this office already when the Law and Justice Party was previously in power. He got the Consul of the Year award, and he was so valued by Poles in Norway that after a couple of days, 30,000 of them signed a petition in his defense.
Podpisało petycję w jego obronie.
MP of the currently ruling Law and Justice Party, Jan Dziedziczak, stressed that Kowalski put everything into his work and did everything in accordance with the Norwegian law and the Vienna Convention. My private theory is that Norway continues to relentlessly realize its own agenda, its plan concerning the demographic policy. Their birth rate is quite low among the native Norwegians, and it's often the opposite with people who migrate there. Norway is simply scared that in the next few dozen years it becomes a country full of mosques and changes radically. Hence, they are fighting for every child which can be easily assimilated. Hence the brutality in taking Polish children away from their families, cutting them off the Polish language and traditions. They are to become Norwegian citizens as quickly as possible, Norwegians in Norwegian foster families. There are currently 100,000 Poles living in Norway permanently. It's the biggest diaspora in the northern country.
Today, members of the Hungarian scientific community took to the streets to protest against Prime Minister Viktor Orban's planned changes to the research model and funding of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences. According to the plan, scientists will have to go through a tender process before receiving funds instead of research institutions being allowed to allocate the funds as they see fit.
The Hungarian Academy of Sciences is solely funded by the state and receives $142 million a year. The protesters claim that Orban's new educational model could mean the end of academic freedom in the country and argued that this is the second hard blow to academia following Orban's decision to shut down the Central European University founded by George Soros. We see that in today's Hungary many things can be done even in the university and scientific fields. We see what happened to the Central European University. One thing I am certain about, this isn't an attempt to make research more efficient. Representatives of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences have released a statement in which they claim that the planned changes put 5,000 researchers and staff in existential and scientific limbo. Many of the scientists are convinced that Orban perceives the Hungarian Academy of Sciences as a stronghold of liberalism and that he tends to lump in the institution together with the Central European University. The Academy is a multicolored institution. Don't you dare call us Sorosists, liberals and communists. Orban has for years been locked into a conflict with parts of the academic establishment. His decision last year to ban gender theory programs from state-funded universities also caused people to take to the streets to protest. Orban didn't budge, however, and specified during a speech in Romania that he will focus his third term in office on winning the culture war against what he perceives to be a deeply embedded liberal bias within spheres of culture and academia.
That's it from the news. Do stay with us for the weather, business and more from Poland Daily. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.
Good evening, I'm Paulina Otterstein and welcome again to Poland Daily Weather. Tonight the minimum temperature will be -5 degrees in the area of Katowice with quite a bit of clear skies in our country tonight. In Krakow, Katowice also going up, Warsaw, Łódź, Olsztyn, also Białystok and Bydgoszcz. Some snow will appear in the area of Zielona Góra and -1 degree over there. The maximum temperature tonight will be 1 degree in Koszalin as well as in Szczecin. Now let's look at the forecast for tomorrow. So tomorrow quite a bit of sun in the west, also Poznań, Bydgoszcz, Koszalin and Szczecin will see the most sun. 4 degrees will be the maximum. In the west, also near Poznań, Bydgoszcz and Szczecin, 3 degrees in Koszalin as well as in Gdańsk, 2 degrees in Warsaw and 2 degrees in Łódź with some snow as well. Snow with rain will appear in the southern regions as well. And now let's check the forecast for the upcoming days. So as we can see on Thursday, quite high temperatures, up to 7 degrees in the western parts of the country. On Friday, 8 degrees will be the maximum. The northwest, 3 degrees in central Poland, quite a bit of rain is expected. And on Saturday, nice and sunny, except the southeast will see some clouds. 9 degrees will be the maximum, 8 in the southwest and 5 in central Poland. This is all for tonight. Thank you and see you soon.
You're watching Poland Daily Business Edition. The energy crisis is looming over Poland. We may lack the electric power for our industry and for the citizens. Therefore, there are lots of thoughts what to do next. One of the options is to start building the atomic power plant. This is ongoing discussion. It's almost 40 years, and like every government discussed this issue, and still we don't even have a location. Our guest tonight, Professor Grzegorz of Nicolaus Copernicus University, an expert of International Agency of Atomic Energy. Sir, so let us start. How many of energy units we will lack in the next 10 years?
Well, the recent study by the Polish Minister of Energy says that we will lack some 50% of energy if nothing happens within 20 years. So in 10 years, it will be going slowly down, our capacity to fulfill the demand for the electric power. And in 20 years, it will be really a serious crisis.
Assuming that Polish economy will develop and we will be on the par with, say, South Korea?
Well, we are exactly below the level of South Korea, because South Korea per capita has something like twice as much as Poland. But taking into account the present growth of Poland and the present amount of citizens, we will lack some 40–50% of electric power if we do not undertake any action.
Okay, and the atomic power plant is the solution?
Well, not only in the case of Poland would be a solution, because Polish production of energy is based on coal, and brown coal essentially, and it will not last forever. It will finish soon. So we must replace brown coal and black coal. And we have not enough wind, we have not enough photovoltaic power, so we must substitute coal with something. The solution other countries adopt is nuclear energy.
It is nuclear energy, but it is still very expensive option. It is a burden that takes years. We have examples from Finland, we have examples from Great Britain, the countries that normally are very well organized, and yet the time of this investment is really killing the whole financial procedure.
Well, the time of the investment is long. So this is one of the points that decisions should be taken quickly, because building time is at least 10 years. About costs. Cost of production of energy, in any case, is high. You said Great Britain. Great Britain is building wind stations on the sea. This is the most expensive way of getting energy. So in any case, the cost is high. In the case of nuclear power, one has to be prepared with something like 4 billion euro to get 1 gigawatt of energy, which is a reasonable amount of energy we need.
Speaking of that, do we have any new technologies? Because there are rumors about some breakthrough technology that will deliver nuclear power quickly and cheaply.
Well, a lot of research is going on, and a lot of solutions could be considered, but these solutions are not ready. I'm an expert at International Atomic Energy Agency working for thermonuclear power, working on a station which will be still a research station in Cadarache in France, which will be ready in some 10 years. The cost of this experimental power station is 13 billion euro just for the beginning. So, well, there is a lot of rumor, there is a lot of discussion, there are different possibilities, but nothing is ready.
Yes, so we are looking at the available commercially available nuclear power plants, and there is a French option, the American option, Chinese option, and Korean option. Am I missing something?
Yes. No, well, one could get also Brazilian option. Also, Brasilia constructs by their own. They construct nuclear power stations, but who is the most developed? I would say France, which uses majority of some 80% of electric power comes in France from nuclear power. Americans who developed it for first, and they are still very active in this field. They should also invest in this field. Korea, who builds 4 nuclear power plants in Arab Emirates, so there is a lot of different options. Obviously, we are in Europe, and European options should be the closest.
That means the French...
Well, I'm not saying French, I'm saying European option. Well, this decision is not to scientists. This decision is up to politicians, up to government. Well, Koreans are at the moment the most progressing country. I'm also an expert in Korea, working for Korean research in the field of thermonuclear power, atomic processes in thermonuclear power. So I know that they are very well prepared, very well organized, with high industrial capacities. Obviously, this is not up to scientists to decide which option should be used.
But looking at the options, we see the current nuclear power. Is this a design that's 40, 50 years old?
No. Well, this is a constant progress in this field. One can choose also Canadian type of reactor, which does not need enriched uranium, which is an option, safe option, because enriched uranium could be used for nuclear weapons. So one can use this. One can use Korean option with a high-pressure water cooling. There's a number of options one could choose. There is not the options 40 years ago. Well, in Poland, 40 years ago, there was an option to build a nuclear power plant, one of them, with the technology from a country which does not exist anymore. So we would have a technology from a country, well, not existing, just one power plant outside an industrial reality. So the option from 40 years ago, luckily, is over.
You mentioned that the brown coal that is powering currently Poland is going away. We will not have it in 10 or 20 years. Will we have uranium?
No, we don't have uranium. Uranium is to be bought in Australia or in Kazakhstan, in any part of the world.
Will there be enough uranium for nuclear power plants?
Yes, there will be still enough uranium for next 50 years, I would say, for next 50 years. The thermonuclear power plant we are building in Cadarache will be ready just in 50 years, commercially ready just in 50 years. But we will need electric power in Poland in 10 years.
There is also an issue of safety of the nuclear power.
Well, so there's the question about safety is about everything. As an example, I give the biggest disaster which happened in Italy recently. It was in Viareggio, with a train bringing liquid gas, and it exploded on the station. So a number of houses was destroyed, and some 50 persons were killed. So the question about the safety is everywhere. Nuclear power plants are projected to be safe.
So, sir, thank you very much for this insight to the nuclear energy. Professor Grzegorz Karwasz of Nicolaus Copernicus University.
Hello, welcome again to Poland Daily Weather. I'm Paulina Otterstein. Tomorrow in Poland, the most sun will be seen in the west around Zielona Góra, also in Szczecin, Koszalin, Poznań and Bydgoszcz. The maximum temperature will be 4 degrees and the minimum will be 1 degree in Lublin, also in the area of Rzeszów and Krakow. Some rain is expected over there as well. Snow will appear also in Łódź, Olsztyn and Białystok. And now let's see the situation for tomorrow in Europe. So our continent will be quite warm, relatively warm tomorrow. Quite a bit of sun in Prague, also in Vienna, 7 degrees over there, 15 degrees in Madrid, Spain, 19 in Lisbon with a lot of sun as well, 0 degrees in Helsinki, 2 in Moscow with some snow. This is all for tonight. Thank you and see you soon.
Grzegorz Nowak is the permanent associate conductor of the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra in London. His position was made permanent in January 2015, having already served for 7 years. He has led the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra on tours to Switzerland, Turkey, and Armenia, as well as giving numerous concerts throughout the UK. His Royal Philharmonic Orchestra recordings include Mendelssohn's Scottish and Italian symphonies, Shostakovich's Symphony No. 5, all of the symphonies of Schumann, and the complete symphonies and major orchestral works of Brahms and Tchaikovsky. Grzegorz Nowak's career was propelled to international status after he won the prestigious Ernest Ansermet conducting competition in Geneva, winning the first prize and all special prizes, as well as the Grand Prix, Patek Philippe, Rolex Prize, Swiss Prize, and American Patronage Prizes. He currently holds the position of music director of the Spanish Symphony Orchestra in Madrid and of the Polish National Opera in Warsaw. His production of Goplana by Zelinsky won the 2017 Operatic Oscar from the International Opera Awards in the category of Rediscovered Work, competing with such opera theaters as La Scala in Milan, Teatro Regio di Torino, or Komische Oper Berlin.
Just slightly changing gears now. As I understand it, there is quite a difference between conducting opera and ballet. Maybe you could explain to our viewers this difference and the sort of intricacies and details behind each.
Well, yes, of course. There are some major differences, but also some similarities. The ballet is using music to which they practice, and the nature of dancers is that they have to do a number of complicated figures within the time of the motive or music which goes there. While conducting the ballet, the conductor has to be very aware what they can do so that he doesn't go too fast, which could make tremendous problems, or doesn't go too slow. And it could be different if there are, let's say, 2 casts of dancers, because one dancer is different from another. So you have to work with the ballet not only before the premiere, but also during the performances to see who is dancing and what they can do. In this respect, one can find similarities with the operas just as well, because, say, one singer may have much faster fioraturas, the quick notes which you have to sing, and another has those notes much slower because the technique is different and the voice is different. Also, depending on the weather or the feeling of the soloist, one day one can sing a little different, another day there might be too dry air. The air is not long enough. One has to speed up a little bit, help the singer in this respect. So a conductor has to be very careful to support singers during the performance and not to impose, this is the way we've done it, this is the way how you have to do it during this particular performance. But also because of singing, you have words, you have expression which has to be passed on. It's quite different than the dance figures. One needs to be, in many ways, even more flexible in opera to take into consideration all those various factors.
Grzegorz Nowak has performed alongside many of the most widely respected soloists of our time, including Martha Argerich, Yefim Bronfman, Nigel Kennedy, Anne-Sophie Mutter, Mikhail Pletnev, Mstislav Rostropovich, Gil Shaham, and Christian Zimmerman, and has worked with such singers as Janet Baker and Cheryl Milnes.
Perhaps just lastly, I could ask you something about your own musical tastes. Obviously, you're living and working in a world of classical music. Is there anything outside of that world that you enjoy listening to?
Well, I'd hate to disappoint you, but I'm so immersed in classical music that basically nothing else exists really for me. I tell you, I had this experience when I was a professor in Ohio. Students asked me for meetings, say once a month or so, because they consider me like a guru and they ask all kinds of questions, including live and anything. And in one of those meetings, one of the students asked, and what do you think about Michael Jackson? And honestly, I asked who? I had no idea. At the same time, then two different students said, one said he's a singer, another one said he's a dancer. I said, well, make up your mind. And they tell me, oh, he's both. You just have to watch him. So that was the one time when I actually, because of students, when I actually watched a little bit to learn who was Michael Jackson. But only for the period that I knew who they are talking about and so on. It's not the kind of music which is so involving me. I'm really totally immersed in complexities and greatness of all classical music.
When you listen to classical music, for example, at home or in the car, are you relaxing and listening to this, or are you kind of thinking about the intricacies of it and that could have been done better or something, or well, can you switch off from that?
It's an interesting question. I read once a paper by a professor from Harvard who claimed that in past centuries, long time ago, humanity had the contact with the outer world, and that, in his opinion, it was evident in the work of Homer. He says that Iliad and Odyssey are two different worlds, that in Iliad you have constant contact of the heroes with the outer worlds, that gods were actually deciding about what's happening in the earthly world. Okay, and he says, well, it's different in Odyssey, that, well, gods are no longer in contact with people, and he claims that it was the introduction of a lie, of a Trojan horse by Odysseus, that humanity broke this contact with the other world, because if you ask the false question, well, you couldn't get an answer for it. And he was compared to this communication to driving a car and listening to the music. He was saying, well, it's actually a matter of point of view, whether you're principally driving a car and, by the way, listening to music, or whether you are, in fact, listening to music and immerse your mind into this music and just, by the way, also driving a car. And for me, I always am immersed with this classical music, but I am not losing track of my road.
I see. Okay. Fascinating. Mr. Grzegorz Nowak, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining us here at Poland Daily Culture.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Poland Daily History. Today we are at the Warsaw Citadel, a structure built by the Russians in the 1830s and later on used as a prison for political dissidents and fighters of the January Uprising of 1863 to 1864. Some of the prisoners held here would later on become prominent figures in Polish politics, while others were executed or sent to Siberia after imprisonment. Today, we will talk to some of the experts about the specifics of the Citadel, the January Uprising, and more history about the era. Our first guest is Michał Cislak, junior custodian at the Museum of the 10th Pavilion in the Warsaw Citadel. The January Uprising would later on have significant ramifications all across Europe. And I was wondering if you can tell me what are the influence of the January Uprising to countries such as Austria, Russia, and Prussia.
Bez wątpienia największy odzew na powstanie styczniowe był w Austrii.
Without doubt, the biggest political response to the January Uprising was from Austria. Austria was seen as one of the harshest partitioners up until the 1863 January Uprising, treating the Poles very badly. Austria's influence during the so-called Galician slaughter of 1846 should be mentioned. Austrian officers incited, or even according to some legends, paid Polish peasants for bringing back the heads of noblemen.
Swoich polskich obywateli całkowicie zmienia front.
And this nation, so hard on its Polish citizens, changes its view on Poles after 1863. It sees that the January Uprising, this great power, even though eventually defeated, has united Poles, and so they decided it would be safer to allow Poles to have some authority, and in 1867 a dual Austro-Hungarian monarchy is proclaimed, with Hungary being declared their own kingdom with a high degree of autonomy, but Poles also gain a much higher degree of autonomy than before. They have rights to Polish schooling, they have rights to the Polish University in Lwów. The Polish press is free, Polish culture is free, and until the eruption of the First World War in 1914, Galicia becomes a sanctuary for Polish fighters, particularly from the Russian partition. When one needed to rest or felt the need for a change, then the Austrian partition of Poland was the place to go to, as it was very safe terrain. As far as Germany goes, the unification of Germany in 1871 was in some way also dictated by the January Uprising defeat. The Germans were well aware of the fact that they had a lot of Poles on their territory. They were politically unpredictable, rebellious, they could cause the Prussian authorities some problems. So when Germany's unification occurred, the Kulturkampf, the culture battle, and the battle for unification was mostly directed against the Poles. The entire system of mass deportation of Poles from the Prussian partition to that of Russia or Austria, the intolerant schooling system, the attempt to turn Poles into Germans, was related to the January Uprising defeat. When it comes to Russia, in Russia there were few changes. Russia continued as a monolith, as an empire. They felt victorious. They knew they were the masters of their own destiny once again. Unfortunately, the political situation for all the conquered nations was worse, not just for the Poles, because Tsar Alexander III, who in his first period of rule was unusually liberal, trying to continue the politics of Alexander II, having seen how the January Uprising ended and realizing that the Poles could repeat something like this and try another patriotic breakaway, patriotic for Poland, but dangerous from the Russian point of view, returned to a gendarme of Europe style of politics, a politics initiated by his grandfather Nicholas I.
Żandarm Europy powrócił do polityki zapoczątkowanej jeszcze przez swojego dziada Mikołaja I.
And what about France? Did it have any effects on France too?
The French were not very willing to come to the aid of the uprising out of political reasons. They believed that they will benefit more from cooperating with Russia. This line of thought was firmly held by Napoleon III. On a side note, I can tell an interesting story. When Julius Verne wrote his famous book 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, the main character, meaning Captain Nemo, was initially supposed to be a veteran of the January Uprising. Verne's idea was however blocked by his publisher, who argued that such a background story would be received with great animosity in Russia, and that will certainly create a diplomatic conflict between France and Russia, as well as leading to none of Verne's books being sold on the Russian market. This is why Captain Nemo in the end was given the background of an Indian Raja and not a veteran of January Uprising.
Historical events as major as the January Uprising were not without significant impact. The three partitioning powers in Poland at the time would see a shift in internal politics as a reminiscence of the event. Historian Dr. Krzysztof Jabłonka will give us a little bit of insight to the lasting impact that the January Uprising would have on the partitioners. The outbreak of the January Uprising happened in Russian territory of the partition as we know it. And I was wondering if you can elaborate on what effect it has on the three-way partition that was going on at the time. What are the internal politics like, and how did the specific event of the January Uprising impacted the partitions?
Każde z zaborców zareagowało inaczej.
Each of the partitioning powers reacted differently. It should be said that the Polish uprising, as the Russians called it, made a dent in the internal affairs of Russia. At the time, there was political turmoil with people debating as to how far will the reforms go. A great country of the Tsar, which spanned from the Stula River all the way to the Kamchatka Peninsula, was going through essential changes. The more revolutionary of the society believed that the Tsar will finally give its people a parliament, that Russia would become a parliamentary monarchy similar to the one in Britain.
Monarchia parlamentarna przypominająca przynajmniej monarchię brytyjską. Niestety nic z tego się...
Unfortunately, none of this ended up happening. Until this day, some Russians are blaming Poles for it. They said, had you not done that uprising, we would have had a parliament 50 years sooner. Prussians made a different choice. They decided to take advantage of Poland weakened by the uprising and force the process of Germanization, which meant taking away the Poles' right to speak Polish in public. They were ordered to only speak German, and if they said any sentence in Polish, whether at school or at any office, they were given fines or were even arrested. For example, parents of children that would not want to learn their prayers in German were sent to jail. Austria reacted completely differently. They were shocked by the strength the Poles showed in the uprising, so they decided to support Poles by giving them complete freedom to organize their own authorities, and gave the Polish society a very big autonomy in the form of Galicia and Lodomeria, stretching from Krakow all the way to Moldova. It was in this area that in the forthcoming 50 years the Polish culture blossomed. We can mention the University of Lwów. This was a completely Polish school. The Jagiellonian University also had its revival at that moment. Some community universities were also established, and with it came the establishment of the peasant movement and full parliamentarism. Galicia, the part of Poland under the partition of Austria, became to Poles what Italians saw in Piedmont, the place where our battle for independence grew out of. And so, we did not manage to beat one of the partitioning powers, but we managed to drive a wedge between them all. In the end, Austria would join forces with Germany against Russia, while Poland would emerge victorious from that period as a fully independent state.
Ostatecznie Austria z Niemcami stanie przeciw Rosji, a my z tej walki w czasie już I wojny światowej skorzystamy, wychodząc na niepodległość.
The January Uprising was one of the most pivotal moments in the era when Poland was partitioned. The Poles would later on spend decades debating whether or not they had taken the correct path of resistance. During the interwar era, the veterans were treated as heroes, and they would later on serve as an inspiration for the soldiers fighting in the 1944 Warsaw Uprising. That's it for today. I'll see you next time on Poland Daily History.
Hi everybody, and welcome to Poland Daily Travel, where in the next series of episodes we'll be traveling along the Royal Route. That's right, the Tract Królewski in beautiful Warsaw. We'll be starting in the historic Old Town at the Cathedral of St. John. Then I'll be walking and talking with my friend Artur Górniewski as we proceed south along Krakowskie Przedmieście to the center of the city. You'll get to know the landmarks and historical places of interest that are most essential along the Royal Route. So stay with us. You won't find anything this comprehensive anywhere else. Poland Daily Travel walks and talks along the Royal Route. Hi. We're here with Poland Daily Travel in front of the cathedral in Warsaw. This is one of the most important churches in Poland, along with Częstochowa Church and the church in Krakow, St. Mary's. We're going to go inside and meet a friend of mine called Artur. And Artur is going to explain to us exactly what the history is here. So let's go in and meet him. Okay? Let's go. Who is Józef Piłsudski?
Józef Piłsudski, as we call him in our history, Marshal Józef Piłsudski, the father of Polish independence, 1918. There were difficult moments in Polish history and there were beautiful moments in Polish history. Marshal Józef Piłsudski convinced European leaders after World War I that there was a country once more needed on Europeans' map in between Germany and Russia as a buffer area in between so that Europe shall be safer. So we do celebrate.
That was the idea, right.
That was the moment when 7 European countries got back the independence. One of them was Poland. And it was first Polish Prime Minister who is sculptured right over there.
This is this fellow, yeah?
Exactly, Ignacy Jan Paderewski.
So, who was Paderewski?
Pianist.
He was a famous concert pianist, wasn't he? And he became prime minister after the Treaty of Paris.
Exactly.
In World War I. And he was also, what was his relationship with Piłsudski, for example?
So they were most important Polish dignitaries of these days. Paderewski, as you correctly said, now he's a pianist, he's an amazing, especially Frédéric Chopin performer. He became an amazingly popular star in the US even before World War I. So in the days with no tattoos, US ladies were wearing stockings with his notes drafted on them.
Really?
Paderewski is claimed...
What does that mean? They would have an actual stocking that was printed with notes and they would pull that on and wear that?
They would draft his notes.
He was a rock star.
He's considered to be like the first amazing star in the US. And then after the big war, so World War I, in general, US industry, movie industry, music industry starts to be about a person or starts to be about a branch. And Paderewski is considered to be first famous US VIP star, and it's President Wilson who points it out in his famous list that Poland must get the independence one day. Paderewski, every single concert, he was starting like this: ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ignacy Jan Paderewski, I am Polish, I want Poland to be independent again. Thank you very much.
He was a huge ambassador, right?
Ambassador is a great statement, just as Frédéric Chopin was previously.
Right, but he's interpreting the works of Chopin, so there's a continuing tradition there, and becomes in some ways just as famous, doesn't he?
Frédéric Chopin music is so romantic because we will never hear Frédéric Chopin himself. And we must remember that Frédéric Chopin is like Gaudi in Barcelona. He's the one of the kind. Frédéric Chopin never went on the track. Frédéric Chopin was doing it his way. And if you wanted to experience amazing Frédéric Chopin performance before World War I, then you were listening to Paderewski concert. And we must remember, nowadays maybe we are crazy about football, maybe we are crazy about winter sports, maybe we are crazy about tennis, but over then people were crazy about classical music. And it was first in pecking order, and then long nothing, and then there were another interests. So he was the man of his days. He was doing something very important for our culture and our identity, and people all around the globe loved it. So there he is, and he becomes Polish Prime Minister after World War I. And this is how everyone on planet Earth knows, hey, this is the guy, I know him, and he's the Prime Minister of the country that just got back its independence after 123 years.
Right, and so he was working closely with Piłsudski at the end of World War I.
Correct.
He was perhaps the international face, Piłsudski being the more Central European, Polish Central European face. And together, their objective was to be the leaders who were influencing people as a tandem to start the country of Poland again.
Cooperation, that was very important, also with gentlemen that are right behind you, Roman Dmowski.
Who is this? Yeah.
Let's take a look.
Roman Dmowski. Now, he was also a very important political leader inside Poland, as I remember,
yes.
From reading at the same time as Piłsudski. Tell us a little bit about him, Artur.
Now it's about the cooperation. It's about people with different political points of view who decided to go on together, even though there were differences in between them, and they decided to go on together for theirs in common good, for the good of their country, for the good of their nation. We are having a quotation in here of Roman Dmowski referring to the connection of Polish secular history and religious history. It's written in here that Christian Catholicism is not only a part of Polish history, but that's Poland indeed. And it's our religion, and actually I would like to call it our philosophy, our way of behaving, our way of being that made us through many difficult moments of our history.
It's an intrinsic, an essential part of the national character. If you want to understand Poland, it's inseparable from understanding something about the church. It's the basic influence there, right?
Exactly.
It's because you have a very homogeneous country of basically 98% Polish, or more, even higher, 98% Catholic anyway.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, half, maybe 40%, up to half, 50% of Polish society attends a church every Sunday.
It's an extraordinary number, isn't it?
That's quite a lot.
Yeah.
And 20 up to 25% of Polish people do practice communion every Sunday.
Right.
To do it in our nowadays tradition, you must confess your sins, and this is the place where you can see where we can do it in the confession room. And practicing this religion, this philosophy, very frequently helped us through difficult moment of Polish history. And this is a philosophy that helps you understand that the more difficult it is in here, the better will be over then. So when we were having difficult moments in our history, we were taking this as an advice. As a way of understanding our history very frequently. And then in a very strong moments of Polish history of 15th, 16th, 17th, up to 18th centuries, Poland very frequently was the country that was protecting the religion, the faith on European continent. And these are the topics that probably we will raise today.
Absolutely, I hope so. So here we are, we're in the cathedral. This is Poland Daily Travel with Artur, and we are going about in the cathedral here and looking at some of the important memorials and starting our tour of the Royal Route. We're going to be walking along the Royal Route, and the first of many different segments introducing this heart really of the Polish society, this very important street which originates in the Warsaw Old Town and continues all the way to the Wilanów Palace, to the south of Warsaw and nearer to the river. Okay, so we'll be right back Poland Daily. Stay with us. Stay with me and stay with Arthur too. Take a bow, Arthur.